evening and welcome to The Real Joe Biden. I'm Boris Epstein, strategic advisor with Trump 2020. Joining me is Katrina Pearson, senior advisor with Trump 2020, and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from the 21st District of New York. Thank you so much. Well, before we go on, actually, I've been told very specifically that I've got to point at the marquee over there and tell everybody to text MAGA to 88022. Text MAGA to 88022. Well, that wraps it up. Joe Biden went pretty long. He got really angry there at the end. What did you make of the fourth night?
Well, I think that we are seeing 50 years of failed policies. We are really looking backwards to the failures of Obama's and Biden's term and Biden as vice president. We heard from the Clintons the day before. This is not the type of leadership we need. What we did not hear from Joe Biden was standing up for our law enforcement. We did not hear from Joe Biden how he's going to grow our economy. And we deserve those answers. That leadership we know comes from President Trump.
Did anything tonight add to the Democrats' potential votes in November, Katrina?
No, Boris. In fact, what I just saw was kind of scary.
At the end there, right?
At the end was kind of creepy for me. He got really angry and very scary when this was an opportunity for the Democrats to show their vision for the future, to show their love and passion for the country. And the only thing that they have expressed was their disdain for President Trump's personality. They negated every opportunity to provide a sensible policy because they don't have anything. To your point, Congresswoman, this was a very huge missed opportunity for the Democrats. I don't believe that they've added anything to their ticket. In fact, I think it drew away because what this highlights tonight is President Trump's positive patriotism and what he's had from the very beginning.
So it's been 4 nights of this socialist snooze fest. Socialist snooze fest. It was terrible. The first night was boring. The second night was a bunch of losers like John Kerry. Last night was retreads like Hillary Clinton, as you mentioned, and Bill Clinton went on Tuesday. And tonight was supposed to be the big night. And they had Bobby Francis, Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, Mike Bloomberg, who's been literally a member of every party in America. And then they supposedly topped it off with Joe Biden. Is this the worst major party convention in our lifetimes?
Well, look at the viewership. It was in the toilet, frankly. There were not a lot of people tuning in across the country.
In the toilet.
And when we are looking at key swing states, or you look at my district, I know that there are not people who are tuning in because they want to see strong leadership. And I think what we've seen this week is a real contrast. President Trump has visited Pennsylvania, he's visited Wisconsin, he's visited Minnesota, and he's visited Arizona. He's out there hearing directly from the American people, outworking Joe Biden to earn their votes. President Trump put more mileage on the campaign trail this past week than Joe Biden has put in his entire campaign. So we are seeing a real contrast here, and we're going to see an even more contrast next week when we see President Trump's strong leadership and hear from the American people directly rather than the has-beens like the Clintons.
Katrina, Joe Biden decried racism, said that on his 100th year in politics, he's finally going to end racism in America, even though he's the one that talked about racial jungle, called African-American men predators in the last few months, said, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, talked to a black reporter and referred to him as a junkie on cocaine, and then said, to top it all off, all black people are pretty much the same, right?
Right.
So is Joe Biden the right person to end racism in America?
Well, Joe Biden is definitely the person that started the institutional racism when we talk about all of the complaints that we're seeing today. Everything that's going on with George Floyd, the protesters, Black Lives Matter started under the Obama-Biden administration. Look, Joe Biden bragged about being the guy that authored the 94 crime bill, saying we're going to lock everyone up unless it's jaywalking, right? This is the guy that wrote the bill, that pushed for it. Bill Clinton signed it into law, and Kamala Harris pushed forward on it. So look, I think that this choice is going to be very clear in November. With minority voters, it is very clear. And I've seen people my age, whether they're in their 40s, even in their 30s, are all coming out saying we are not fooled by this message of Joe Biden because they've heard exactly what you said just a couple of weeks ago. Joe Biden is still exuding racism out of his mouth.
And something that really jumped out to me tonight, he talked about anti-Semitic bile and claiming that there's anti-Semitism among Trump supporters, which is total nonsense. I'm proud to be Jewish, fully of Jewish heritage. The anti-Semitism I saw this week was from the DNC when they had the despicable Linda Sarsour on their programming under all of their branding. They had Linda Sarsour who pals around with Louis Farrakhan, who's called my people termites, wants to exterminate us. So how dare Joe Biden be that hypocritical? I mean, does he not know what's going on, or does he just think that Americans are stupid?
They're hoping that Americans aren't tuning in to how far left Democrats are currently in this country and his supporters are. The fact that you have the reprehensible Linda Sarsour, the fact that you have people during the daytime programming saying they want to dismantle capitalism. And when it comes to combating anti-Semitism and standing up for the state of Israel, no president has done more than President Trump. I've been to Israel to hear directly about how grateful they are for President Trump's strong leadership, strengthening our alliance with Israel.
Katrina, you and I have been on the Trump campaign for a long time. We've been with President Trump for a long time, and it's been such an honor to work with you and, of course, for President Trump. Have you ever heard him say or do anything that even resembles the anti-Semitism we see from the left? He is the most supportive of the Jewish people of all Americans. Don't you agree?
I agree. Look, his daughter and son-in-law are Jewish.
And grandchildren.
So it would be pretty absurd for him to say anything negative, to do anything negative. So, look, we've been there a long time.
Right.
All they can do is hurl the insults, whether it's racism, sexism, misogynism. Every ism out there is what they're going to throw at our president. Since 2015, we've been dealing with this. But it's just not going to stick, because having a platform that's just vote for me because I'm not Trump, it's not a winning message for the American public. I was just in Minnesota. That state is on fire for President Trump. He is the law and order candidate. The crowds, and it was just me. And I just was blown away by the enthusiasm.
Big deal.
They cannot wait to get out there and vote for President Trump. They've made millions of phone calls. I was just excited being there.
Speaking of phone calls, don't ignore our marquee. Text MAGA to 88022. Something, Katrina, you just hit on is law and order. Congresswoman, you are a huge supporter of our men and women of law enforcement, of the police. Compare and contrast this convention, which is for chaos, for rioting, for letting America go down the toilet, as you mentioned earlier about their ratings, versus the policies of our President Donald Trump.
Well, silence is deafening. You have not heard a single speaker who participated in the Democrats' convention stand up for our law enforcement officers. President Trump has an incredibly strong record of always backing our police, always standing up for our law enforcement. That's why he's getting endorsed by law enforcement agencies across the country. That's why he has the support of the Border Patrol. I come from the state of New York. I represent upstate New York. We are seeing the rioting and the looting in downstate, in New York City, in cities that are led by Democrats, where they have not shown support and leadership for law enforcement, men and women who are making sure we have safe and secure communities. And as I talk to voters in my district, the suburbs, mom, working women, they are very concerned about what they're seeing on their television screens. And they know that they're not going to get the support they need and the policies they need for safe communities from Joe Biden, but they will get it with President Trump.
I mean, Katrina, during this convention, the socialist snooze fest, they lifted up Seattle and Portland, the rioting. Oh, it's peaceful, it's kumbaya, we're hugging and loving each other. I mean, again, do they think Americans are not paying attention? Do they think Americans are dumb, or just are Democrats trying to fool the American people?
Well, they hope Americans aren't paying attention, and that's why you see such a controlled attempt to put out information to the public and to block the president's message. So I think that's been quite obvious. But what they still haven't picked up on, the mainstream media, is that there's so many other forms of media out there. And that's why you see the big tech companies cracking down on the information that's being disseminated out into the public. But to the Congresswoman's point, moms, women, this is a voting bloc that they are banking on turning out for the Democrat Party. And, I mean, I've heard it firsthand in these swing states. These moms want to make sure that their kids can go outside without being attacked by a violent mob.
And that is the key of every American, right? It's safety and security. Physical safety and security, economic safety and security. I mean, Joe Biden sort of dribbled on about the economy and jobs lost. Well, the last 3 months have been the best job-gaining months in the history of this country. The S&P 500 has hit records. This president built the greatest economy in the history of the country, and he's doing it again. And Joe Biden presided over the worst recovery in history. Can Joe Biden offer anything, Congresswoman, to the American people that is better than President Trump?
Well, what he's offering is $4 trillion in new taxes. So for all of the Americans viewing this, for all of the small businesses across this country, those taxes are going to be devastating. It is going to cause job losses, and it is going to slow our economic recovery. Look, I've worked with President Trump while serving in Congress. He has delivered the largest economic rescue package in our nation's history over the course of the COVID crisis. And I know, as I visited small businesses in my district and talked to small businesses across the country, were it not for his strong leadership, they'd be in very, very challenging circumstances. But they know Joe Biden is not the answer because it means more regulations, higher taxes, crushing our small businesses.
And it means open borders.
Right.
I mean, think about that for a second when it comes to China and the virus. Imagine if we'd had open borders like Hillary Clinton wanted. Imagine if we had, raising taxes like Hillary Clinton wanted. If President Trump were not president, we'd be in far worse shape today. And it was because of President Trump and his policies that he was able to build this massive, robust economy that withstood the pandemic. And a lot of Americans recognize that.
As we wrap up this first segment of The Real Joe Biden, let's talk about the speech a little more. Katrina, he went on for a long time. Uncle Joe, I think he was trying to prove he has stamina. We know he has none. President Trump has all the stamina you need to be president. Biden's got none. And then he got so angry at the end. Plus, the lack of haircut was kind of distracting a little bit. I mean, what happened there with Joe Biden's speech? Was it what you expected? Was it worse? Or did he actually do a better job?
Well, I think he completed sentences, so to me, I think that was a positive for him. But I will say that it was extremely disappointing because, again, I felt like this was going to be an opportunity for him to change the trajectory of the messaging coming out of the party, the doom, the gloom, the apocalyptic message, and he didn't. In fact, he dug his heels in on the negativity and the tone. And Americans don't like that. They want a leader that sees the bright future and wants to work towards that. And he provided zero vision, so I think it was an epic fail.
Congresswoman, what do you think?
I think Joe Biden is running from his record. He ran for president 33 years ago for the first time. This is someone who has overseen 50 years of failed policies, half a century. I'm only 36 years old, Boris, so he basically, for the course of my entire life, we can blame him for our bad trade deals. We can blame him for a government that's not working. He is part of the swamp that President Trump is trying to defeat. And the American people don't want the politics of the past. They want strong leadership of the future. And I was particularly struck when Joe Biden brought up being tough on China. Every American knows that President Trump has been the toughest when it comes to countering China. And part of the reason why we have to have that strong leadership from President Trump is because of the failed record of Joe Biden and the bad trade deals, losing our manufacturing jobs to China. So the choice is clear. I'm really excited about next week to see the strong leadership and the voices of everyday Americans.
I couldn't agree more. Joe Biden sold our country down the river to China once. We cannot allow him to do so again. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be right back on The Real Joe Biden. But before we go anywhere, Gary Colby's around here. So just for him, again, look at the marquee. Text MAGA to 88022. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with The Real Joe Biden. We're back with the real Joe Biden after the last night, night 4 of the socialist snooze fest that was the Democratic convention. Back with me is Katrina Pearson, senior advisor to Trump 2020, and joining us again, back by popular demand, Stacey Washington, co-chairwoman of Black Voices for Trump. Stacey,
Hi, Boris.
did you enjoy that?
No.
What'd you think?
So he said something, the former vice president, now presidential nominee for the Democrats, Joe Biden, said something about this being the most compelling call we've ever had for racial justice.
She's very compelling.
I actually think this is one of the things that they excel at, which is acting as if they just got here. The Democrats literally just arrived on the scene and noticed that there was a little bit of a problem with racism. And so they're here to solve it this year in 2020. And if you just vote for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, two of the most racially insensitive people on the face of the planet, then they'll fix it. They're promising us November 4th, Boris, they're going to get it done.
This is it, right? So
this is
should we
it.
take our mics off and go home?
Well, I think, if we just give them another chance, a chance, their first fresh chance, they'll fix it, right? So I'm actually tired of that. I think they should own up to the fact that the most racially insensitive places on the planet are inner cities. And I also noticed, and I have to call this out because we were here last night, Boris, and we did have a great conversation. And I think you noticed this too. It's the unspoken thing in the room right now. What none of them have said, I've been waiting all week, none of them have denounced the violence in these inner cities. None of them have talked about the children, legend, and any of these kids who were killed, black kids, white kids, the cops who've been killed. None of the people who've been killed have been acknowledged by these Democrats. They run these inner cities. They own them lock, stock, and barrel. Black people are dying in these protests. And guess what? They're not talking about it. They want to fix it, though, Boris. We just need to give them another chance.
But look, let's stay on this topic just for a little bit, because I keep hearing institutional racism. And it's really hard for me to understand that our country is somehow institutionally racist, except for the 8 years under Barack Obama.
Right.
So you've elected a black president twice, but somehow it's institutionally racist. But look, here's the deal. You're absolutely right. And no one wants to talk about what's happening in the inner cities. What was it today?
Nobody on the left
Black
wants
kids
to talk
matter,
about it.
Black lives matter. All of the sudden?
Right.
So to my point earlier, Boris, Black Lives Matter started under Barack and Biden. Here we are again today. They didn't address any of these issues. They didn't address police reform. They didn't address any of this stuff. But President Trump started this discussion in October 2019. Our president is leading on this issue.
No doubt about it. And something I've been thinking about throughout the socialist snooze fest is that what has not been mentioned is that racial tensions in this country have really boiled over under the Obama presidency,
Right.
Obama, Biden. I mean, Ferguson, 2015, Baltimore. I mean, this all happened under Obama, and it started, remember, with the Tea Summit they had?
Well, the police acted stupidly. This was from the black president, and then we're magically wondering why all this is happening. I think, to your point, Stacey, they've got to be called to the carpet, and I think, and you may have experienced this as well, a lot of black Americans are asking themselves that question, is like, Joe Biden is actually a part of the system. He created the system, and now he wants us. I mean, we're all the same,
Right.
So
One
we
unit
we just have to fall in line and do,
Unlike
do
the
what the
Latino
white man
community.
says.
Right, which is completely diverse, but we blacks are just like the Borg, one mind. Look, I have to say, if they're not going to denounce the riots, if they're not going to acknowledge their part in it, if they're not going to talk about how we literally can't even have our federal police forces come in and protect federal facilities because they're on the ground in areas that are so hostile to them that they can't even get cooperation. There's no prosecution of the rioters. When they're arrested by the police, they're released the next morning by these Soros-appointed and funded prosecutors. And
Good
so the
point.
problem is deep. And I'm not one to be negative. In fact, I have a very positive outlook. That's why I
Very
support
sunny,
President
very
Trump.
sunny.
I'm telling you, I like to laugh and I like to have a good time. But the truth is important. And if Democrats can't own these cities, they can't own what they've done in these cities, if they can't acknowledge that, if they spent an entire week virtually getting together for their convention and not one word about the riots, not one word about the deaths, not one word about the black businesses and white businesses and Hispanic businesses burned to the ground, livelihoods destroyed, neighborhoods completely and utterly changed forever, if they can't talk about that, then I think we have a really smooth road ahead. We'll still push. But
agree.
we're looking at November 3rd really well now.
To your point, you just got back from Minnesota. Something you just said reminded me. During the president's visit this week, the president, in the last week, keep in mind, Joe Biden's not getting a campaign plane, okay?
Right.
He's staying in a deep, dark basement in damp Delaware. Okay, that's what he's doing. While President Trump is all over this country speaking to Americans. Just this week, he's gone to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, the disaster zone there, natural disaster, Arizona and Pennsylvania today. While he was in Minneapolis, he brought on KB Bala, who is an African-American firefighter whose sports bar was burnt down.
Right.
Yeah.
Did Joe Biden bring up any business owners, any minority business owners who were destroyed, his families, livelihoods were destroyed by the riots? Did you see that from the Socialist Snooze Fest?
Well, it doesn't really fit the narrative.
Right.
You know, because then you would have to acknowledge the riots because KB was a victim of the rioting.
Right.
And so I think that they have to ignore the people of the country in order to try to push and force this narrative. That's just simply not going to work for them. But to your point, the president is out there and campaigning. The vice president is out there and
Absolutely.
campaigning.
Wisconsin.
We are out
Right.
there and campaigning.
Yep.
And my message to all of Americans is that it's not even a global pandemic is going to stop President Trump or vice president or the campaign from going out, talking to the people, talking to the press, and answering the tough questions, because Americans deserve to have answers.
Absolutely.
The Democrats put on their all-star lineup tonight, right? They had all those candidates. Bobby Francis, Beto O'Rourke. They had Mayor Bloomberg. They had Cory Booker. Did anybody impress?
So I have to say, I'm always dazzled by Steph Curry's family and how beautiful they are and those adorable kids, and I thought they were cute. But I'm not here for cute. I need somebody who's going to bring me some solutions. And if nobody on the Democrat side will, I know President Trump will. His list of accomplishments is a mile long. And as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to be talking about those, because it seems that Democrats don't care about results. And that's the kind of belief system that brings you Portland, that brings you Baltimore, and in many cases, because I live outside St. Louis, brings you St. Louis, which we have a very high per capita murder rate. The city is run by Democrats. It's time for a change. And all I want people to do, you don't have to, you don't have to text, although I think you should.
You should text
you should text.
MAGA to 88022.
There it is.
MAGA.
Please do it.
Back to Stacey.
But, and I tweeted it, just in case you missed what Boris said, you can go to my Twitter feed.
And the lights. We got the lights tonight.
And the lights are on point. But if you're thinking, like you thought that was lackluster, that performance by the Democrats, you thought that didn't make any sense for you, but you're not sure if President Trump is the one, then do your research. You have the time. There's plenty of time before early voting begins for you to do a few searches, read a few things on the White House website, text me, or I shouldn't say text, tweet me. I'll give you some information. You want an information download? Tweet me. I'll send it to you. Read it. Don't be emotional about it. These people are playing with you. They want your emotions in this game. Making decisions that impact your life should never be emotional. So do that. Then make your choice. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be joining us over here on the fun bus, because we're having a great time and we know what we're doing is right. We have the assurance of our convictions. We know that we're voting for the right person because we've seen the results and we're results oriented. And results orientation leads to success.
Well,
you want success, do that.
But the good news is, Stacey's right. Go do your research. And you can go all the way back to 1972 to
Right.
find information on Joe Biden. And
On the real Joe
Long
be
time.
right there
Yeah.
in the Trump camp in a heartbeat, because this Democratic nominee has failed for nearly a half a century.
Katrina, we've been on a campaign that ran against crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
Now we're on a campaign that's running against sleepy Joe Biden. Compare and contrast that experience of running against a candidate who's just so crooked, so corrupt, but could kind of keep herself together, except for that whole thing, when she fainted for a while. But compare that to Joe Biden, who today is being applauded for, let's be honest, not passing out during a speech.
You know, the difference is Hillary Clinton had been vetted in the past. She had run for president against Obama.
Right.
We have to remember that. So she was somewhat vetted for quite some time, and the Clintons have been out there for a while. The difference here with Joe Biden is his nearly half a century has never been vetted.
Right.
And they're not vetting him, and that's why he won't sit in front of a microphone or sit with a reporter, although somehow Jill Biden can make it up the stairs and sit down and have a one-on-one with a reporter, but Joe Biden somehow can't seem to answer the questions. And I think a lot of people find that to be disturbing. And we should probably check to see if that speech was even live if we're looking. But the thing is, the
Curious
difference
about
is
that.
Yeah.
the difference here. Hillary Clinton, many people had known what was going on. She had Benghazi, and she had so many other things that were already out there. Joe Biden
the
has
emails.
nothing really out there,
Right.
except now Tara Reid.
Well, she's got that. He's got that. He's got the plagiarism. But yeah, he didn't have the 30,000 emails, the
Right.
destroying Blackberries with hammers and all that. Stacey, as we wrap up this segment, And now, next week, the Republican National Convention is going to happen, the Trump Convention. What are you looking forward to?
So it's coming. We're going to have some fun. So I'm excited about next week because I think there's a vision and people enjoy a visionary type of an outlook. People enjoy positivity. And I'm not talking about naivete. I'm talking about a seriously positive outlook because you actually have a plan. Anytime you're facing a huge problem, you feel detached from the ability to deal with it until you sit down and assess that and then say, okay, how can I deal with this? And you work your way back from the solution and you realize, okay, this pandemic is a huge problem for America, but it's not anything bigger than we've tackled in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and so many other local, like these were American tragedies, and we handle them together. 9/11, the Timothy McVeigh bombing. I mean, you go back through our history, whenever we've had problems, we as Americans have sat down and unpacked them, worked our way back, and then we've overcome them. And we will do that again. But we can't do that with someone who is suffering from cognitive decline, whose wife would possibly be making all of the decisions, and who chose as their VP someone based solely upon their melanin content. Because I'm sorry, I can't help it. I've been blessed with a lot of melanin, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't impact how I actually perform. What impacts how I perform is my preparation, my drive for that, and also whether or not I'm the right tool for the job. Kamala Harris is not the right tool for the job. Vice President Pence, yes. President Trump, yes. That other mess we had tonight, no. So it's pretty simple. It's easy. So what I'm looking forward to next week is basically our team laying out the vision for America and everybody taking a second and saying, wow, not only is this fun, but this actually could work, and then going for it.
I love it. What do you think? What are you looking forward to next week? We'll talk more about that in the next segment
I'm just excited that we're finally going to have an unfiltered opportunity to, tout the president's accomplishments because there's just so many of them. The personal impact stories that we have are phenomenal because there are so many policies that our president has implemented that most Americans have never even heard of. So I think we're going to have the first time without that media filter for President Trump to tell all of America what he's actually accomplished.
It's going to be a blast. A lot to look forward to. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us.
Boris.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. But before, look at the lights. Text MAGA to 88022. Stay right there. We'll be right back with the real Joe Biden. Back with the real Joe Biden. I'm Boris Epstein, strategic advisor with Trump 2020. Back with me is Katrina Pearson, senior advisor to Trump 2020. And joining us, Georgia State Representative, a Democrat, Vernon Jones. Thank you so much for coming. Before we go anywhere, have to remind the folks, text MAGA to 88022. Don't leave our marquee out. What did you think, sir, of the fourth night of the socialist snooze fest?
Well, first of all, it was boring. Joe Biden he basically did what my fifth grade nephew would do, and that's read a teleprompter. There was nothing different about that. He didn't talk about his record because he has no record, certainly no record of accomplishment. So I was expecting him to tell us what he's done in the past 47 years. And that's the difference between he and President Trump. He has a dream about, if you elect me again, this is what I'll do.
Biden.
I'll get it right this time, right. Biden, I'll get it right this time. And President Trump is, he has a record. Hey, this is what I've done. He was a job creator. He stood up to other countries who were taking advantage of us. At the same time, he understood the African-American community had been left behind for the past 40, 50 years from Democrats. And at the same time, when you look at this president, he understands the economy. He understands Wall Street. He understands small business, big businesses. And he has provided a climate, at least prior to the pandemic. He put this economy on steroids. And there was nobody out there who was looking for a job who could not find a job. And now they want to blame him for the unemployment. Why? When he had unemployment at a record low and employment at a record high, nobody wanted to talk about it. Now they want to talk about all these jobs being lost. President Trump will bring back these jobs and get us through this pandemic, and we'll be right back where we were prior to the pandemic. Joe Biden just can't do it. That dog just won't hunt.
I mean, that's true. I mean, when you look at the president promised to get this economy back on track really fast, and the economists said, oh, it's going to take 8 months, 18 months, and it's already coming back well ahead of schedule. But we have to talk to you just for a second because you are a Democrat. You are a sitting elected Democrat at that. I just need you to share with everyone why you're supporting Trump, because I know you've taken a lot of heat for this. And so tell our viewers why you changed to vote for Trump.
And we're happy to have you. Welcome to the team.
And he's still a Democrat.
We love it.
So.
But that's okay. You're on the Trump train.
Sure. Let me say this. I want to say to your viewers, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. They lost all traditional values. Now they're embracing being against law enforcement and defunding the police department. None of them, not a single Democrat, has called out all the rioting that's been going on. Not protests, but rioting. Look in Portland, Seattle, and all the other places. Even police officers now feel threatened that they'll be indicted just for enforcing the law. And they're now going on to people's property, trespassing. The behavior that these liberals are doing or conducting now and not being held accountable or called out by the Democratic Party, that really bothers me. And you know what? The bigotry. There is so much bigotry in the Democratic Party. They talk about having a big tent and they march all the people of color out there, but not when it comes to thinking. If you're black or you're brown and you're independent and you can think for yourself, you're a captured audience in their mind. You're not supposed to think for yourself. And that is at the core of the Democratic Party. So I'm not impressed about all those folks they march out there. Donald Trump has a record of really helping the minority community. And that's what people need to examine. A record versus, you're just a captive audience. You can't even think. If you're black, you and I, according to Joe Biden, we're not even capable of thinking for ourselves. And to say...
He said it. He said it.
Yes, he
and
did.
to say to... And white people and everybody should be offended by that if you don't vote for him, you're not black. I am black.
So am I.
I am a Democrat, but I ain't voting for Joe Biden.
I mean, that's pretty succinctly put, very strong. Yeah. What more about the policies of Joe Biden or the personality of Joe Biden is it that turns you off from his candidacy and Kamala Harris's candidacy for the vice presidency for the White House?
Well, first of all, you and I both know they have liberal policies, but I don't know who locked up more black and brown people, Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. I'm still trying to get to that. Secondly, they're embracing now socialism and Marxism. Where did the Democratic Party go? That's not a party that has reflected the things of, I think, John Kennedy. Would Jack Kennedy now want to be a part of the Democratic Party? That's one barometer. Just ask yourself. And then you know what? I am still trying to find one person to tell me one thing that Joe Biden has accomplished in 47 years. Can anybody?
No.
Nobody can tell you. And so for him to make those
Well, like in
promises,
the 94
if you
crime
elect
bill, maybe.
the crime bill,
Well, he did accomplish that.
he accomplished the crime bill with what? He just said, let's lock him up and throw away the key. Look at what it costs us in our budget. And at the same time, President Trump came along and said, wait a minute, this is not reasonable. Let's have real criminal justice reform. Let's make the time equal to the crime. This was just a Joe Biden who just really felt like, I guess he didn't want black people to be a part of his kids' community. I think he called it, what, a racial jungle?
Yes, that's
Verbatim in the 70s, he said that.
But still, no Democrats are saying anything about, oh, that's just Joe. Well, if that's just Joe, I don't want Joe.
Right.
Well, we don't want Joe, but if you just go back and look at the floor speech when he was trying to get the crime bill passed, he was talking specifically about young black men. It's the predator comment, the same thing that plagued Hillary Clinton. But it was really the substance behind that nobody has really even heard yet when he talked about he didn't care about their socioeconomic status. He didn't care about what they've been through. They just weren't socialized and they couldn't be rehabilitated. Joe Biden doesn't believe that black kids, black men can be rehabilitated, so we should just lock them up and, quote, he says, take them out of society. That's the Joe Biden we know.
That's the real Joe.
That is the real Joe Biden. That's what this show is all about.
That's right.
We talk about the real Joe Biden. We talk about texting MAGA to 88022 for everybody. Interact with us. It's a good time. Katrina, in 2015, 2016, when we were on the president's campaign back then, we talked about Democrats joining us. We talked about Democrats seeing what the president is offering. And now Representative Vernon Jones shows that, right? You are a true representation of the fact that people are joining the Trump movement. And that's very exciting for me, don't you think, Katrina?
I think it is. And we did see this a little bit in 2016, not as vocal, obviously. So we do appreciate your voice
Very
out
much
there. And Vernon's not the only sitting elected Democrat that has been out there supporting President Trump publicly. And so we're already in a better place
Jeff
today
Van Drew
than we
switched
were
parties.
before. And so when we look at that comparison, I think we are very much on track to really shock the country again in November because, to Vernon's point, we have a record of accomplishment. Our president made promises that he kept.
Promises
and he can
made,
go back
promises
to the American people and say, I kept my word to you. I delivered results. Joe Biden has never been able to deliver in nearly 50 years.
And I was going to comment on that too. There are many black people who want to support President Trump publicly, but they will be attacked like I've been attacked. And they will be so afraid to come out because the Democratic Party get their agent provocateurs to go out there and attack their character, call them sellouts and all those things. And then white people want to come out and say, I'm for Donald Trump, but they don't want to be called racist. So that's why I say, and I said it back in 2016, the silent majority is going to come out. Because the Democratic Party now, imagine this, they do not have anything to talk about in terms of their record, but even when it comes to those folks who want to express themselves through their First Amendment, they get attacked.
Right.
If you wear a MAGA hat, you stand a chance of being assaulted. Now our First Amendment is under attack by the Democratic Party, and they're not doing anything to protect it. And so when I look at where this party is going, it has gone so far off the cliff with bigotry, with socialism, with Marxism. When you're talking about defunding the police department, that is the most absurd thing. So what do they want to do? They want to send social workers to answer a 911 call? I've had to command a large police department. Domestic call is probably one of the most dangerous calls there is. But, again, Nancy Pelosi has security, so does Chuck Schumer. Let's give them some social workers, and let's take that money and invest in police, real police reform.
That's
where,
a good idea.
we're looking at non-lethal use of force. We're looking at more training for use of force and de-escalation. More training for psychological exams. A lot of people don't know. Police officers only get a psychological exam when they're being hired. But after that, they're on the road 3 or 4 or 5 years. Nobody's evaluated them. We need more money for that. You're taking an Iraq soldier that comes back. They don't get any assistance or counseling, and they put them right back on the road.
We have to support our vets.
We have to.
Support our men and women of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Vernon, as we wrap up this, I want to ask you this. You've been at a Democratic convention before, right? We
Yeah.
talked before. You said you were there in 2000.
Yeah.
What's happened to the Democrat Party? I mean, how far to the left have they gone? We've experienced the socialist snooze fest, as I've been calling it, last 4 days. Compare and contrast today's Democrat Party from the one from 20 years ago.
Well, you know, 20 years ago they were faking right, but they were really going to the left. And they've gotten so far to the left, they don't have anywhere else to go. I mean, do you want to continue to live in this country under that type of governance where all of a sudden you're not even, your constitutional rights, all your rights are being infringed upon? People literally going to people's neighborhoods and demanding that they give their houses back to other families. Black Lives Matter. Let's talk about that. Only Black Lives Matter when a white officer takes a black person's life or have a situation. But when black babies are being shot and killed in Chicago, where's Obama? Where is Obama? He left Chicago. He abandoned Chicago. $11 million place in Martha's Vineyard.
Nice over there. Nice
there.
Nice Martha's Vineyard.
So that's why he's not talking about what's happening to the police, about defunding police and the others, because they live in nice neighborhoods.
Right. Katrina, what do you think has happened to the Democrats? Even the Democrats of 10 years ago, that's not what we see today. The hate, the anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, and let's be honest, the racism we're seeing from the left is very different from what we were expecting, at least, to see 2015, 10 years ago.
Well, this is definitely not your grandparents' Democrat Party, that's for sure. But look who's funding the party. They're pushing the policies exactly where the money is coming from.
Right.
Look at the George Soroses of the world. They want to fundamentally, as they would say, or used to say, transform America. Now they want to completely reimagine America. And the only way they can do that is to destroy our current infrastructure. And that is why they continue to go so far left that they're now off the cliff and in a free fall, hoping that something sticks, hoping they can, well, probably steal the election if they can, hoping that they can somehow get back in charge. They'll do anything for power. And that's what this is about. It's that do as I say, not as I do. Again, you can't have a gun, but we want to be surrounded with armed security. You can't have a border wall, but we're going to live in a gated community. It's always that do as I say, do and not as I do. And that is really the key that most people should pay attention to, just like Obamacare. Obamacare was for everybody else except us. They exempted themselves. So I'm a big fan of saying, if you really support a policy, would you put yourself under it? And 9 times out of 10, they won't.
That's right. And you know what? You hit on something that I think sums up these last 4 nights. One word sums up today's Democrats: hypocrites.
That's right.
That's who they are, a bunch of hypocrites. But we are talking about the real Joe Biden. We're pointing out those hypocrisies. We'll be right back. Representative Vernon Jones, thank you for your support. Thank you for everything you're doing. God bless you, and thanks for joining us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back while you are on break. Text MAGA to 88022. We'll be right back with the real Joe Biden. And we're back with the real Joe Biden on this night 4 of the Socialist Snooze Fest meetup that was the DNC. I'm Boris Epstein, strategic advisor with Trump 2020. Katrina Pearson is with us, senior advisor, Trump 2020, and backed by extremely popular demand, Hogan Gidley, National Press Secretary for Trump 2020. And I would ask a question now, but before I do that, I've got to point to our sign. Text MAGA to 88022. Hogan, what happened tonight, man?
I don't know, man. Look, it's been a week that's left me quite concerned and confused as to what they were trying to do. I mean, look, I think they came up with 2 main themes. One is they don't like the president. We know that. We knew that when he came down the escalator, and after a 3-year Russian witch hunt hoax and the whole deal, we know they don't like him. I get it.
They still don't like him.
They still don't like him.
They still don't
I
like
get
him.
it. Number 2 is that Joe Biden's a nice guy. Great. I know a lot of nice people. Doesn't mean they should be president of the United States. My granddad was a great guy. I don't want him sitting behind the Resolute desk making decisions on behalf of this country. So a lot of what they didn't say, I think, is what highlights the convention. They didn't talk about the $4 trillion in tax increases. They didn't talk about the Green New Deal and how it would crush the energy sector, literally destroying 10 million jobs automatically. And tonight, Joe Biden told a whole lot of lies, talking about jobs he would create. I mean, my goodness, it's almost, you know, I wish Joe Biden would have been in a position of power in maybe, I don't know, maybe the last 50 years to have tried to effectuate some of the changes he was talking about. I wish he, maybe even, I wish he'd have been in the White House. My goodness, he was there for the last 50 years, and none of these things he talked about that he would do, he did. He's ineffective, he can't get it done, and now he is a complete tool for the radical left, and it showed.
Katrina, we've been talking about this speech all night, and that was supposed to be the big point of the night, right? The Biden speech. Was it live? Was it taped? Like I said, it appeared to be live. Yeah. We'll probably never know in the end, but fine, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll say,
that's right.
Sure, it was live. Should probably brought a barber there for him, but that's just Joe being Joe. Why do you think Biden can find it within himself to just be different? Find it within himself to change the course of this failed candidacy. He failed in '88, failed in '08, failed as vice president. Why is he failing again?
Well, I think our previous guest sort of hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's some cognitive decline there. It's been obvious. I mean, and that is the reason why his wife can go out and do interviews, but he can't. There's a reason why he can't sit through a interview with note cards and still not get the answer correct. It's still why he's insulting black people. I mean, this is very obvious.
Are you saying the Cardi B interview wasn't enough?
Not enough for me. I mean, Charlemagne is probably on point. You know, he should probably just stop speaking. And so I think that's really what it is. I'm actually curious, Hogan, though, what did you think at the end? Did you think he got a little angry?
He came across as a little angry. He had that little scowl on his
The eyes started popping out.
That's right. That's right. Didn't blink very much. I think, look, he's been resting for the better part of the last 6 months. Right. So to come out and give a speech like he did, okay, that's great. But still, the substance of what I think a lot of the American people wanted to hear wasn't there. You talked about coronavirus. If you had the cure for this, if you had things that would actually go to help the solution, then give it to us. He gave us nothing, nothing at all, and you saw that throughout the entire week. It was empty platitude after broken promise, after crazy radical leftist idea. None of that would go to improve the lives of any single American citizen. And on top of that, the theme that kind of ran through the whole 4 days was, it's not just that America is inherently evil, according to the Democrats. We're the cause of the world's problems, too. I mean, the way they ran down this country.
Not China.
Not China, right? Not China at all. And it just kind of blows my mind that the media will watch this and go, wow, that was brilliant. Mm-hmm. Look at the way he delivered that speech. He said to give one speech in, 6 months? And they're going to say, look how great it was and look how substantive it was. There was nothing in there. Nothing in there at all that would have helped the average American. This president, however, Donald Trump, came in and just in 3 years turned everything around that was wrong with the Obama administration, improved countless lives. There were more jobs created than there were people to fill them because of Donald Trump's policy. So for Joe Biden, I thought it was an epic fail.
Guys, I've got good news.
Okay.
I've got really good news. Two pieces. One is the DNC is officially over. August 20th is done. It's past midnight. The DNC is
Great
behind
news,
us.
great news.
Thank God. The better news is that next week is the Republican National Convention, the Trump Convention. It's going to be a blast. What are you, Katrina, most excited about?
Well, I'm really excited to see the president. You know, I mentioned earlier, we're finally going to have this opportunity to get past that media filter and talk to the American people. And I guarantee you, Boris, we're going to have enough people to fill all the boxes. We won't have to repeat people in the boxes.
What was that?
For
I believe they
viewers.
did that.
I don't know what that was, guys. All I know is that was very...
To those
Right.
to those who don't know what Katrina's referring to, just give a little more background.
So after Kamala's big, impressive speech, everyone starts clapping in their own little boxes. And then afterwards, people were posting these pictures online. I have to admit, I thought it was fake, but it wasn't. They were repeating images in the boxes.
Unbelievable.
And how
Right.
many of them told her worth? There were like maybe 10 that
There
they
was-
started overlapping
right.
after 9 or 10.
That's right.
And there were
crazy.
multiple
Lazy.
boxes with the same people. I can guarantee you there's going to be thousands of people watching President Trump.
Well, some of them
It wasn't lazy. It was all they had. It was all they had. All they could muster
It was a
the
metaphor
9
for
people.
not checking any boxes. Yeah,
Exactly right.
That's what the Democrats want to be able
9
to check
versus
boxes.
millions.
Right.
That's
next
exactly
week.
right. I mean, the enthusiasm for this president is out there. You see
Right,
it with
no
the
doubt.
1.1 billion views we've had on our social media platforms on this campaign. Joe Biden actually goes to camera, and I clicked on there the other night. He had 19 viewers at one time. I'm fairly certain 17 of those were members of the media just looking to donate, and the other 2 were staff that had to be there. No one cares
I feel
about
bad
this
for the
guy.
staff.
Right, but our supporters would crawl across broken glass to vote for this president. You can't get Biden supporters to click on a link to watch him on the computer from the comfort of their own bedroom. So I'm just telling you, I'm excited for what we have to offer, what we're going to show the American people. And as you just said, that mainstream media filter is gone. The president gets to speak directly to them, remind them, thank them for all they've done, all the support, but also remind them what we've been able to accomplish together in this administration and how everyone's life is better off because of what we've been doing in the White House. And I just can't wait for that. I'm excited to see it.
Something I've been saying every night, I said it when you joined me a couple nights ago, is that campaigns reflect the candidate. The Biden campaign is pathetic, it's sad, it's decrepit, it's diminished. The Trump campaign is vibrant, full of stamina and strength. So we have our convention next week. This week, during the Socialist Snooze Fest, during the DNC, we put together this awesome live response show that goes live right after the socialist dribble over there. Do you think, you're a comms professional, press professional, you think the Biden folks are going to do anything similar?
Oh, no. They just don't have it over there. They just don't have a ground game. They don't have a digital game. They don't have a good ad campaign. We are so prepared on this side. And look, not only do we have the best message, we've got the best messenger, he's got the best work ethic for sure, and he's got the best record to show the American people real positive results that went to affect their lives in a good way. You compare and contrast that with Joe Biden, a 50-year failed career in elected office with nothing to show for it. He may get a pat on the back from China, where he sent all of our jobs, hurting the American worker and the middle class, but he sure isn't going to get it from the American people. And I have to tell you, I don't think they were buying what he was selling tonight.
Katrina, you've known the president for a long time. You've worked for him. You've been a champion for him.
That's right.
What are you expecting to see in his speech? That's what people are really looking forward to next week. What are you expecting to see in the president's speech from the White House next Thursday?
I think what we're going to see is what we always see in our president, his love and his passion for the American people and for our country. Our president and his family have made so many sacrifices for us, for Americans, for American jobs, and for the security of our nation. So you're going to hear more of that. But I also want to piggyback on what Hogan just said about them not being able to pull this off after the convention. But the reason they can't is because once our president speaks, they're going to have to contrast. And it'll be very difficult to talk about President Trump's speech that's really talking about dismantling the institutional racism by Democrats, including Joe Biden, to talk about undoing all of the damage that Democrats have created and caused in this country. And they're going to be unable to have that discussion.
Right.
As we wrap up here, and I've had such a blast these last 4 nights. It's been amazing talking with both of you all. And of course, the main point, the reason we're excited is because we are representing President Trump and carrying his message to the American people versus the tired old, sleepy Joe Biden. As we wrap up, where do you see this race standing today? Where do you see it going next week? And how do you see it going between now and the key day of November 3rd?
Boris, you know me.
I do.
He's winning. He's always winning. He'll always be winning, and he's going to win in November. And, I was just talking to everyone today after getting back from Minnesota. That state is going red in November.
You heard
the
it here.
excitement, the enthusiasm, the number of people that came out, they are fired up and ready to vote for Trump. He's winning again.
Right, and he's going across the country while they were doing their thing that was canned and all done, with this fancy editing and all done with the computer.
Fancy
over
but
Zoom.
glitchy. Fancy but glitchy.
Fancy. They had a lot of Hollywood folks, and that's the difference. It's Hollywood versus the heartland. And quite
right.
frankly, the president's been across this country in the heartland, went to Minnesota this week, went to Wisconsin, went to Iowa, went to Arizona, Pennsylvania as well, reminding the American people he is here standing up for them. He has not just made their lives better, as I mentioned before, he has provided safety and security. And that's one thing no one mentioned all of the death and destruction and the looting and the rioting going on in these cities. And what blows my mind is it's the Democrat convention. All those cities are controlled by Democrats. How about a tidbit or two on how to prevent people from getting knocked unconscious in the middle of the street in your towns? They can't muster anything that has a semblance of protection for the American people because it would offend somebody. This president is not concerned about anything that would stand in the way of his duty and sworn oath to protect the American people, their health, their well-being, their safety and security. He's done it for the last 4 years. He'll do it for the next 4 too.
It's going to be a great week next week. And then we're off to the debates. And I think you'll both agree that President Trump is going to crush sleepy Joe Biden in those debates. Hogan Gidley, Katrina Pearson, I'm Boris Epstein. It's been an honor to be with you talking about the real Joe Biden. Before I let everybody go, I've got to remind you, look at the marquee, text MAGA to 88022, and most importantly, vote for President Trump, re-elect President Trump on November 3rd, and let's make America great again. Thank you, and good night.